I ruined my mum's life and reputation. This is one of the most intense stories I have ever read on Reddit. It's kind of long, it's totally worth it, and it comes with all the updates we could ever dream of. My 40F parents, dad 63 male and mum 60 female, have been married for 43 years. I have 6 siblings, 42 female, 38 female, 34 female, 20 male, 20 male and 18 male. I have been with my husband, 39 male, since we were 15. I got pregnant at 17 and we moved in with my parents. I gave birth to my now 22-year-old daughter. We got married at 18 shortly after. My dad's father passed away shortly after our wedding and left his ranch-style house to my father. My grandparents built a house next door to my parents when they retired. My parents decided to let us live in this house and told us this would be my inheritance. My husband and I had no issues with this. We went on to have a 20 male, 14 female, 5 female, and I'm currently 7 months pregnant with my last child, a boy, due in April. I thought we had a good marriage. We were intimate more than twice a week, we went on date nights, we bought each other gifts, we didn't fight. My entire world was shattered on New Year's Eve when I returned early from a girls' trip I had taken with some friends. I walked into my bedroom to find my mum having sex with my husband. My mother screamed at me to get out of their bedroom, which really shook me up even more. Unfortunately, my oldest daughter was also home in her bedroom across the house getting ready for a party. She ran out and witnessed my all but a bedsheet naked mother run out of our house next door to her house and slam the door. My daughter was devastated and went to my sister's house. I asked her not to say anything until I first talked to my husband. I asked him for the truth. He told me that my mum seduced him when we were 18 and living in their house. They'd been having unprotected sex at least once a month for longer than we were married. I ran the math and was horrified because the timeline meant that my twin brothers and youngest brother could be my husband's. I immediately called my dad and told him to come to my house without my mum. I made my husband confess and my dad was devastated. He and my mum were high school sweethearts too. Needless to say, we could hear my mother screaming from her house when he confronted her. I then told my older sister, and she and I decided to have her throw a party for the whole extended family, and we invited my ex's family as well. At the party, I had my 22 female daughter take all the children to our basement and put on a movie, leaving only the adult children and siblings, and I told them exactly what they'd been doing. Most of the family is on my side, except my 3 youngest siblings, 38 female sister, and my ex's entire family. They all say that I'm an arsehole for dropping this publicly. Word got out and my mum's best friend, who was on leadership at my mum's church, my childhood church, called me to verify. My mum has since been let go as the children's pastor there and claims I've essentially ruined her reputation and life. My dad kicked her out and she's now living with my 38 female sister. And lastly, my dad insisted on a DNA test for the 3 youngest boys before he'd consider anything to do with their marriage. The twins are my husband's bio children. I've since kicked him out and he's living with his parents. My father and I are discussing me moving into his much larger house and him selling my grandfather's house and giving me the money to buy a new house somewhere else to get rid of the memories. My husband is appalled and furious that I proved he is actually about to have 7 kids instead of 5, that I'm going to be taking half his business away from him. My husband started his own HVAC company a few years back, and for the first 5 years I helped him get it set up, ran the office completely, and took time away from my teaching career to help him get this established. In my state, all marital assets, including businesses, are split 50-50. Since the house was still in my father's name, my husband will get no money from the sale. Neither will my mother, since inherited assets are not subject to be split in divorces. My mother is also not likely to get any alimony, as our state is not a no-fault divorce state. I'm now over a month removed, still extremely bitter and angry with my mother, especially at her hypocrisy of calling me a whore and shaming my family when she's done much worse. I also despise my ex with everything within me now, as he was effing both my mum and me, and in some instances coming to our bed minutes later. He got my mother pregnant less than a week after getting me pregnant, and while I thought it was so cute and fun that I shared a pregnancy experience with my mum, she was carrying my children's half-siblings. He has broken all trust I had in men and being faithful. I've already procured a good lawyer from the firm that helped us in financial matters for both me and my dad is helping pay for it. My twin brothers, one of my sisters, and my ex's entire family have gone no contact with me and my minor children, and my children have essentially lost all of their grandparents but my dad, 2 uncles and an aunt on my side, and my husband's 3 brothers due to this mess. I have also developed ulcers and digestive issues because of this, so I'm visiting the doctor soon, and I've been in therapy since the first week of January. I've offered this for my 2 adult children if they need family therapy with all of us, but they're doing individual therapy right now. My 14-year-old knows that we're getting divorced and why, and she's so angry at her dad that I struggle sending her to his house on the weekends. I feel like she's old enough to make a decision on that, but I don't want to damage her relationship with her dad. I've told all of my kids that it's okay to love their dad, even if he hurt me, but the 2 oldest have cut him off 100%. I won't tell my youngest 2 until they're teens why we got divorced, and everyone else has agreed not to spill anything until they're old enough to understand. As for how I had no idea this affair was ongoing, my husband confirmed to me that they would have sex at my mum's office at church, in their cars, at a motel, and when we built the business, they started having it routinely in his office once I went back to teaching. They also had it in our houses too, when my father would go away on business trips or I would be out of town. It was pure happenstance that I came home a day early from a trip because I was uncomfortable from being nearly 7 months pregnant and just wanted my own bed for me to find out. Knowing they'd be carrying on this full-blown affair still if I hadn't caught them is what I'm most upset about. The fact that the grandmother and father of my children cared so little about destroying our families is what I can't get past. What's hardest for me is that my own mother would do this to me and would continue to do this for years, not caring when it all blew up in her face and she would be destroying her entire family. Also, to add insult to injury, my husband confirmed in one of our mediated conversations the affair started when I apparently made him angry. He didn't tell me and instead vented to my mum when they were alone. She comforted him and they had sex. He loved it and then pursued her after that. He said he would have divorced me, but he knew that he'd get cut off from her and she was so much better at sex than me, so he stuck it out with me. He told me I was a placeholder. Of all the betrayal and low blows, that statement is what keeps me up at night. I tried hard to go the route of a mediated divorce, but my ex told me yesterday through his lawyers that he doesn't believe the baby that I'm carrying is his, and he wants a DNA test as soon as he's born because he doesn't want to support a child that isn't his. He also believes that I routinely cheated on him through our marriage and that I knew about his ongoing affair, and used that as my excuse to have my own affairs. None of that is true, but I kind of wish it was because it would make the divorce easier. My lawyer basically told me to get ready for a long, drawn-out, brutal, contested divorce and that my ex is likely going to try every underhanded tactic in the book to make my life even more miserable. Some frequently asked questions. My twin brothers look like my egg donor side of the family. They look very close to my uncle and grandfather. They clearly don't look like my dad at all, but they also don't resemble my husband much either. My son looks like my soon-to-be ex-husband, and he's the only child that you can visibly tell is his kid, although my 14 female daughter has his nose and jaw shape. 2. I was definitely enraged the day everything went down, but my dad talked me off the murder ledge and reminded me that I needed to think of my baby and my other kids before I do something that would remove both of their parents from their lives. That is what spared them. I still lived in a rage fog for the next few days, which is what led to the revenge party. I only regret not telling my brothers privately that my egg donor had been cheating. 3. I honestly don't know all the reasons my 38 female sister is on my egg donor's side. She doesn't get along with me or my sisters and hasn't since high school. I'm not that worried about her. 4. My twin brothers are upset that I sprung the news publicly. That is what my dad has gotten out of them. They are also in therapy, and my dad has told me to just give them time. He thinks it's just them killing the messenger. I did not tell them the possibility that my ex was their dad, but they can do math and figured out that they're the same age as my son, and he's younger than the length of the affair. My dad sat them down and explained his reasoning for the DNA test was to prove cheating and not because he was going to abandon them. He is their dad regardless of whose sperm fertilized the egg. 5. I don't believe that my egg donor and soon-to-be ex waited until he was 18 to have sex, but at this point I'm letting my dad fight that fight and letting him do what he needs to when dealing with her and their divorce. 6. I have contingency plans ready to enact in the event they decide they want to move in together, but my lawyer doesn't believe my ex-husband is stupid enough to do that with the divorce proceedings turning ugly. 7. I forgot to add this in earlier. My husband is 4 months younger than me. My birthday is in December and his is April. He will be 40 soon. We were in the same graduating class all through school from kindergarten to high school. He's not a full year younger than me as others have speculated. I'm focusing on my pregnancy, my kids, and moving on.
This is by far the best revenge story I have ever heard. Story time. So my aunt ended up going to her ex-boyfriend's wedding. So my aunt is the disappointment of my mum's side of the family. Like, even my parents tell me not to become like her. Even my grandma hates her. And you know what that means? She is the exact type of woman I want to be when I grow up. My aunt, who we'll call Amy, is in her mid-30s now and she's got loads of tattoos, piercings. She's always got different coloured hair. She plays the drums and she works as a bartender. So here's the kicker. So last year, after a really bad mentee bay, I begged my dad to take me to my aunt's house. I just needed my cool aunt in my life. I had just dropped out of my final exam and I was in pretty bad condition, not gonna lie. And that is when Auntie Amy told me this story. So at the time, she was dating this guy who we will call Steve. And Steve was the one. She dreamt of spending her whole life with Steve. That was until she found out that Steve was getting a little bit cozy with Susan from accounts by the photocopier, if you know what I mean. Not judging at all, Steve. And if you thought that was scandalous enough, my aunt one day gets a knock at the door. Guess who it is? It's Susan from accounts. And dear Susan is here to deliver a wedding invitation. And do you know what? It was a bold move. I admire the bravery. And that wasn't the only news she was delivering, nay. She also dropped the bombshell that Susan was pregnant. Now, this is when Amy pulled the Uno reverse card. And my aunt excitedly turned round to Susan and said, "Oh, that's quite interesting actually, Susan, because Steve's infertile." So before they split up, Amy and Steve were trying to have a baby together and they were struggling and then they ended up breaking up. But before they did, they went to see a doctor about why they were struggling to have a baby. And the result of this ended up getting posted to Auntie Amy's house after they broke up, and it turns out that Steve was infertile. And Steve never found out this information. Poor Steve is about to have 2 bombshells dropped on him. Okay, let's come forward in time again. Auntie Amy very cordially accepts the invite to the wedding and she goes to speak to Steve's brother, who she was still quite close friends with, and she encourages him to play a part in her revenge. So at the wedding, there is a little section called Take a Walk Down Memory Lane. So it was basically just pictures of the couple from over the years. After a few cute pictures of the couple, a picture of Susan kissing another man pops up, then another, and then another. Just as the bride Susan starts losing her shit, up pops Steve's infertility test results. And boy, was everybody here for the drama. Steve obviously looked utterly humiliated and Susan began bawling her eyes out. This is what you get for messing with a woman's true feelings. Okay, so a couple of you asked for my opinions on these stories. Now, although I think this is absolutely exceptional revenge, and yes, Steve did cheat on her, could we not have revealed this at like a different time? I absolutely love the brother as well. Like, of course he wants to get involved in the drama. He must absolutely hate the bride for wanting to get involved in his own brother's demise. But yeah, let me know what you guys think.
Traveled to a foreign country to get pregnant by a complete stranger with no strings attached. 7 years ago, when I was 24 years old, I decided I wanted to have a child while I was still relatively young and energetic. I had a college degree, made $90,000 a year as a marketing analyst, and had been investing in the stock market since high school, so I knew I could afford to take care of my kid. The problem was that I didn't really want to be with a guy. I'd tried the dating thing, but nothing clicked, and besides, I was always too busy to to invest in a relationship. At the same time, I wanted a child, someone I would love forever and who would love me forever. And I didn't want to wait until my biological clock started ticking alarmingly. I considered going to a sperm bank. I could afford it, but I've always hated medical environments and thought it would be creepy to have a child with a faceless man. I thought about getting naturally inseminated by a guy I met online, but I didn't want to deal with child custody issues. Finally, I decided that since I'd already planned a 3-week working vacation to a foreign country, I won't say which one for privacy reasons, I might as well try to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Long story short, after asking around and paying some people, I found this guy who was willing to sleep with me every night for 3 weeks. Since this country has a low cost of living, he was willing to, quote, do the deed for a few $100s. He spoke okay English and wore a white button-down shirt, so I think he was a college student who wanted some extra spending money. I didn't really expect it to work, but 2 weeks after I got back, I missed my period and discovered that I was pregnant. Yay. The rest of my pregnancy went really well. My mom was a little shocked at first, but she moved in with me after she got used to the idea of becoming a grandma before the age of 50. My dad ditched my mom when I was a baby, so fuck him. I switched to working from home 6 months into my pregnancy and was even promoted a few months after I gave birth. Having a marketable, pun intended, degree is a great investment, kids. My son is now 6 years old and the happiest little boy I know. He has a mother and a grandmother who love him to pieces and can give him a good life. When COVID hit and his school went remote, my mom was able to make sure he kept up with his learning. Support systems are so important, everyone. Sometimes you shouldn't be afraid to take the road less traveled. I'm over 30 and haven't met any guy that I want to date, much less settle down with, but I have a son who I'll love forever and who will forever love me. I'm even thinking of going back to that country to give him a sibling. Everyone still thinks that I got knocked up by accident, a youthful mistake while on vacation type of deal. Only I know the truth. My son is not some unfortunate mistake. He's a deliberate miracle. So many of my female friends are hitting their 30s and scrambling to find a guy and or get pregnant, but I've been coasting along happy as a clam.
He will live to regret cheating on me. Story time. So I was with this boy for 2 years before he cheated on me at a party. He had gone to this party with all of his guy mates and I decided to stay at home and study. I'd like to think that I'm quite a trusting, non-controlling type of girlfriend. So I have no issues with him going out with his boys. Thankfully, a girl in my class was at the same party that my boyfriend was at. And at like 1:30 in the morning, she sends me a video of my boyfriend dancing with this other girl. And the video just progressively gets so much worse. He starts kissing her and then she starts to lead him away. Bless, this girl was so apologetic. She kept apologising for not stepping in and stopping him. I just kept saying that this is his true colours coming out, so there was no way of stopping him. I was collecting receipts. The next morning rolls round and he comes over to my dorm. He's a little bit more lovey-dovey than he normally is. But I was not holding back. I confronted him about what had happened the night before. And I tried to give him the chance to tell me the truth. I tried hinting that, oh, but like my friend from class saw you there, like how was the night? And still, he gave me nothing, so I whipped out the big guns. And I have never seen anyone dive off the deep end with excuses quicker than this boy. He was saying, oh, it was just a mistake, I was drunk, I didn't do anything with her, I just kissed her. I was having absolutely none of it. So at that point, I took myself over to his dorm and I took back everything that I'd left there, everything he'd given me. And whilst I was bagging up my stuff, he was begging me not to leave. So once I returned home, that is when I started planning my revenge. So he comes from a really religious family. So much so that relations before marriage is off the cards. Containing any sort of substance is a no-no. And he heavily relied on his parents to pay for his college, any spending money he needs. And he didn't have a job, so he was reliant on them for money. So I started to compile some pictures of my boyfriend together. There is pictures of him smoking with his friends, a video of us doing shots in New York, him chugging a beer whilst playing beer pong, and then for the grand finale I finished with the video of him cheating on me. I then sent a copy of this video to his parent, to his auntie, and then just about anyone else who held authority over him in his family. The results came in quick and they were immaculate. Literally that day he was pulled from university and he was forced back home under a state of house arrest. and he was only allowed to leave the house to go to his community college classes that he'd enrolled in. And he just completely lost the ability to have any form of fun whilst at college. I know this because one of his old guy mates actually angrily messaged me. He said how it was my fault that I ruined their plans to get an apartment next year. I mean, to this day, I have absolutely no regrets. It was so easy, he just should never have lied. And that is why cheaters should be shown absolutely no mercy.
Why do some pretty girls have a hard time finding and keeping guys? Because there's one thing that trumps it all, and that is confidence. I'm going to show you how to get it at any age. A few years ago, I was in a clothing store with my husband, browsing around and laughing. And this young girl, at the time she must have been in her early 30s, came up to me and asked me about this thing. It's a thing to monitor my blood sugar because I have diabetes since I'm 12. And she said, look, I have diabetes too, and I see you with your husband. Can I ask you advice? I'm having a very hard time with men. I feel like every time I tell them that I have diabetes, they don't want to be with me. Within 5 seconds, I understood this girl's problem. I said to her, I said, it seems like you're the problem here. You're probably giving off an embarrassed vibe and a vibe of like, I'm not good enough. And then when you approach these boys or these men, you're like, look, I have something to say. I don't know how I'm going to say it. And I don't know what you're gonna think. And off the bat, within the first 5 seconds, the guy's already, haven't said a word, but you've already scared him off. He's already checked out. Because at that point, he's just a mirror of you. You're scared, he's scared. Look, when I met my husband, within the first couple of minutes, I told him I had diabetes. I didn't say I am a diabetic, I said I have diabetes. And it was in passing, part of the conversation. I had to take my insulin. I said, you know, I gotta go take it, and it was done. And I also told him I was an athlete. All of it was part of who I am, of a whole package. And the whole package was unapologetically me. And that is called confidence. I already see the comments, but how do you get confidence if you don't already have it? And I'm gonna tell you, because it's so simple. Step number 1, you set a goal for yourself. Only for you, no one else. Nobody's asking you to become a lawyer overnight. A simple goal. I'm gonna walk 30 minutes, 3 times a week. Follow it. That's why the goal has to stay simple. Once you're confident in that goal, move on to the next goal. You know what's gonna start happening? Sudden, something's gonna happen inside of you, and you're gonna start trusting yourself. Wow, I can do this. I've been doing this for like a month. You start trusting yourself, you're gonna believe in yourself. You won't even have time for another thought. And once you believe in yourself, all of a sudden the confidence is gonna come. Because you know, without a shadow of a doubt, that you're capable. So the confidence comes in automatically. You won't even have to look for it. Once you're confident, you don't have to chase anything. You prioritize yourself, you put yourself first, you feel good, you emanate that, give off a positive vibe and attract everything to you. Now, put yourself in a box and be one thing. That girl, she was a diabetic. And that's why I said, you are not a diabetic, you have diabetes. You cannot put yourself in a box, even if it's a pretty box. Even if that one thing is, I'm pretty, I'm rich. It doesn't work, those things can go. In fact, the most insecure women in the world are the models because they're put in a box just for their looks and they're scrutinized and they know that those things can go in a second. What you have to do is don't put yourself in a box. Build up the trust in yourself. Believe in yourself to the point where you are unapologetically you. And there is nothing more attractive than that. Not even beauty.
Okay, so I've been home for a week after 2 months of solo travel, and I did 8 months last year. I'm cranking it out. I'm trying to get everywhere except for Sydney. But if you've just come home from solo traveling and you got the post-cruise blues, you're all sad and whingy and wah, I want to help you. Because here's the thing. Coming home can be really fun. It's insane because you go overseas, you live a different life, you fuck it up, you become a completely different version of yourself, and then you come home and you're like, whoa. Because it's the environment that embodies who you used to be, if that makes sense. And you kind of feel like you've become a new person without to sound like a cliche and a fucking, oh my god, I travel and I'm independent and I see the world. Like, whatever. But it's true. You become a different version of yourself. So coming home can be really hard when it's the environment that you feel like used to constrict you. But here's the thing. I'm going to tell you some of the things that make me happy about being home, and hopefully they can make you happy too. Number 1, when I get to come home, I get to feel clean. I get to have a full, pamper of myself and pamper it out, right? I get my eyebrows done, I get my lashes done, get a little lift, get my hair cut, go to the dentist, go to the doctors, do what I have to do. And not only that, just a full clean shower, a full body shower. Because when you solo travel and you're on a budget, you don't feel clean a lot of the time in hostels. It's just a part of life, right? You're dirty, you're feraling it up. I love that. Number 2, seeing my family. Come on! Okay, obvious one. I love seeing my family. Part of the reason it was so easy for me to leave in the first place was because I didn't have a huge support system and unit around me in Sydney, but I do have a few people and I love them very dearly, and it's amazing coming home and catching up. And I have one friend who actually doesn't watch any of my TikToks, right? Which is actually kind of nice because, Jesus Christ, she doesn't watch my TikToks, so when I come home, we can talk about it together. Makes me want to cry. Number 3, seeing my closet. So many clothes that I don't get to bring with me traveling. I get to pop into my closet and I get to experiment and I play dress up like a fairy because I like to connect with my inner child. Like, being so serious, connecting with your inner child is really important, and I find that so fun. So many other things. Coming home can be good, and you can embody that happiness anywhere in the world.
My friend won't let anyone in her house after 9:30, and I just found out why. They're the happiest couple that I've ever met. Like, if you didn't believe in love, this couple would make you believe in it. But one evening, it all came crashing down. I arrived at JC's house at 5 p.m. sharp. She is obsessed with time, always wondering why someone's a minute late or a minute early, as if she's a detective and you're in her interrogation room. But before I get into what happened, let me tell you a little bit about JC. She's got pitch black hair, a nose ring, wears dark clothing. She's the type of girl that has pumpkins sitting out in the beginning of September, and she's super welcoming. Actually, the rug on her front door reads, "Leave now." So tonight I was going by her house because me and her had planned a movie night. But we had to start the movie night at 5 because she never lets anyone in her house after 9:30. As soon as I walked into her house, I immediately smelled cinnamon cookies. I was hoping they were for me, well, for us. But JC just brought in a big bowl of popcorn and some drinks, which was fine. I certainly wasn't going to complain and lose her trust for the next 2 decades. Then the movie ended. We thought Halloween 2 was okay. While JC went upstairs to find another movie, I decided to give myself a tour of the house, and here's when things started to go wrong. I was just glad she was willing to watch another movie and that she was letting her friends back into her life. She hadn't really been social since her and Tyler broke up. No one knows what happened between them, just that they were together one day and then the next day they weren't. After the breakup, no one heard from Tyler again. Then we started the second movie, Saw 4. She fell asleep during the movie, and the next time I checked my phone, it was 9:15. I thought, I better get going soon, even though she probably wasn't gonna wake up in the next 15 minutes. I headed over to the kitchen to grab a glass of water before leaving, and then I saw those cinnamon cookies on the counter, and I was like, she's not gonna miss one, right? After finishing the cookie, I turned on the water on the sink to wash my hands, but I was trying to be like really quiet because I didn't want to wake her up. The water didn't wake her up, but my scream did. So the last thing I told you is JC awoke to my scream. I saw the face of a man outside of the kitchen window. She ran to the kitchen and I told her to call the cops. What did he look like? She asked me, but I didn't know. He was definitely a man. I think he was white. She burst out in laughter and said, "That's enough scary movies for tonight." But I was refusing to leave because I had just seen a man. I knew I saw a man out the window. Then I saw the same man through the living room window, except JC saw it too. She ran to the front door and I thought she was making sure it was locked, but no. She was making sure I didn't look through the peephole. I ran up to her and yelled, "Move! We need to be able to identify this guy for the police." Confusion hit me. Why won't you move? She broke down and started crying. At this point, I could tell that she had basically given up. She was hiding something. She said, "You know that old woman that me and Tyler visited?" Now, let me just preface this. Tyler and JC were about as open-minded as people come. They tried basically every religion, and they were meeting up with this woman because she claimed to have some certain abilities. While she was telling me this, the man was still banging against the door. But as open-minded as they were, she told me that when she met up with the old woman, they couldn't help but laugh at her claiming to be one of the last real witches in the world. I tried to look around Jackie to see what was going on outside, and that's when I saw it. This was the stuff of nightmares. The man was on all fours and had pitch black eyes. And when he opened his mouth, he had cat-like teeth. She got up and ran to the kitchen and grabbed the tray of cinnamon cookies. I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you not freaking out? Then she walked outside and started giving this half man, half creature these cinnamon cookies. And that's when I realized Tyler always did love cookies.
I found out I had a brother, which, by the way, is already a shock to the system, right? I grew up as an only child, and suddenly I had to adjust.
I wasn't the center of attention anymore. Wasn't happy about it. He kindly informed me that essentially doing ancestry DNA kits was his full-time job. He had done 4 others of them and found out about 4 other siblings that we had, sent me little photos, sent me little biographies on everything that he knew about them, and told me that he had tried his luck already. When I finally flew to France to meet him for the first time, we decided we were going to have a career change. We were going to become investigative journalists. We were going to scour the interwebs and figure out who's daddy, who was our donor. We were going to find out who he was, which, by the way, not an easy feat, okay? He's an anonymous donor, which means he's not easy to find, but we were like, it'll be fun. So we're sitting at the table at his mum's apartment in Bordeaux, middle of France, and we are looking through all of our sisters' profiles. We're looking through our brother's profile. We're looking on Ancestry DNA. We're looking everywhere. We were like, we're going to find this man if it's the last thing we do. Unnecessary. We came up with a theory. We came up with a little hypothesis on who our father could potentially be. And you know what? I think it was a little bit biased because you know what? We were kind of like, you know what? It would be nice if he would be our father. And you know why? You know why? Longest time we went about our lives presuming that our father was the same as our sister who did not know she was a donor baby. And we reached out to her, poor thing, bless her heart. And we were like, hey, you've got siblings. You've got male and they're siblings. And she was like, what? What are you on about? And so we had to kindly inform her that we matched with her on the DNA test. But she had to have had some clue anyway to have done the kit in the first place. But when we messaged her, she was like, nah. So we thought that potentially her dad, when he was younger, had chucked out a little bit of sperm, made a bunch of other babies, and then not told his family. And from there, we gathered that information as intel. And we said, okay, well, that's our father. Not until months later did I get a random text from Roman's mum saying, oh, by the way, found your donor. This is his Facebook. And just sent us my donor's Facebook randomly. So we spent days investigating that. I don't know who we thought we were. 2016 Shane Dawson? I don't know.